That is a squirrel, and I might be paraphrasing here, but I ate that fucker. Welcome to the only podcast about movies, and in this case, the only podcast about The Revenant. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir Dowd. Along with me, we've got two special guests joining us today. Returning by request, Jess Tucker.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me back.
How many notes have you got today?
I thought 3 pages, but there's 4.
3 pages, the most beautiful handwriting I've ever seen.
Yeah, I can't read it. It hurts my eyes. Its glory blinds me.
I know. If you compare it to like the pink notes that I have, because knowing Jess was going to be on the show, I decided to take notes. Can you read any of this, by the way?
Riveting radio right now.
Yeah.
Riveting audio-only podcast. Let's visualize this. We have another guest here.
Well, hang on. I'm getting to it. I just want to know.
I can read the word Revenant at the top.
Nailed it.
Who else we got?
And we also have my good friend Jimmy Ferguson here, Jimmy is a director and DP, a fantastic director and DP. You should check out his work at jimmyferguson.com.
jwjferguson.com.
Let the man say hello.
Hello, world.
Such a good friend, by the way. He had to talk about his handwriting before he introduced you. Let's be very clear.
Hey, listen, if we haven't established that this show is about me, then we haven't done our job right.
All right.
Jimmy, we brought you on board because you are a fantastic DP. You and I have yet to work together, but we have talked about it on numerous occasions. And we wanted to get your perspective on this, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your work and, where you come from as well.
Yeah, I am a DP professionally, and I direct my own films as well. My background originally is in philosophy and photography.
Oh, nice.
And that's sort of combined to make abstract visual films that explore philosophical ideas.
Yeah, I think you and I are going to have a good conversation about it.
I also think we brought him in for the right film.
Yeah,
exactly.
correct.
This is the film. So, Matt, The Revenant.
Yes. First of all, the only thing I knew about The Revenant before actually seeing it was I know it's a type of D&D monster. And that's really the only thing I knew. I pulled out the monster manual, but that had nothing to do with what we were talking about.
Jess, I'm sure you did a dictionary definition of The Revenant.
Oh, yeah.
You did?
I did.
I knew it. I knew you did.
Do you want me to pull
please.
it up?
Can you just tell me what the dictionary definition of The Revenant is?
Of course you did.
It's from the French word revenir, and it means to return, particularly from being dead. It's also a medieval term. Referring to a ghost that returns to torment the living.
Was the Dungeons and Dragons monster I was talking about.
Oh, really? Seems appropriate for the title of the film as well.
Of course.
I mean, it's better than the guy who almost died and came back.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
that's what I would call it, but I'm no Inarritu award-winning screenwriter, so whatever. It's also based on the legend of Hugh Glass, who is a famous frontiersman. And the synopsis from IMDb is a frontiersman on a fur trading expedition in the 1820s fights for survival after being mauled by a bear and left for dead by members of his own hunting team.
That's when it was, the 1820. I could have read that easily, but I was like, is it like 1900s? Is it 1850? I don't even know. Okay, that makes sense.
And also, I think one thing that was confusing for me was location. Like, I knew it was America, but I didn't know where and in what sort of
it was Canada.
Well, they shot it in Canada.
I thought it took place in Canada.
No, I think it took place in
Missouri. He calls out Yellowstone.
Yellowstone.
He calls out Yellowstone at the end.
They start in South Dakota.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I also had North Missouri.
Yeah, I had
Missouri. They travel down.
Yeah, travel through Missouri.
Well, I guess my alternate title for this film doesn't work anymore, but I guess because this film is so seeped in its the way it was done, the production of the film, if I had to name this film, I would call it Canadian Batman Begins. because it's kind of similar in a little bit of story points, but if it's not taking place in Canada,
I would have called it Canadian Inception. Like with Leo and his
because there's
his
dreams imagery here.
Yeah, I would go Canadian Inception more than Canadian Batman.
One has a plot that is similar.
Let's get into politics here. There's probably no need for Batman in Canada.
You want to get into politics? I have a theory on why they shot in Canada.
Okay.
Well, tell us.
Because they wouldn't let the Mexicans into America.
Into America? Possibly.
Not yet.
Well, Inarritu though.
He's Mexican.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm saying if he's in charge of the shoot, he would have had some, surely some pull on who they could
Donald
cast.
Trump era.
So, let's do the roundtable of like just initial thoughts before we get into spoilers.
Sure.
Like just initial impressions, what people thought of the film. Matt, how about you?
I think it was a very good, very on as a whole, very entertaining film. I enjoyed my time while watching it. Now, let's talk about also when we do this sort of how we saw the movies. Jess, I know in particular you have a very interesting story about yours, but the mine is not so. It basically I was able to see a screener. Granted, I saw it on my projector, good old 8 or so feet screen, so I got the visual punch of it, but I did not have the experience of seeing it with a live audience.
I can feel
around.
Jimmy cringing, slowly dying inside right
now. He can chastise me later, but I don't think that particularly affected me too much on this. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was solid. I didn't, and obviously the cinematography is nuts, and the way they made the movie is insane. Story wise, it was solid. It's not something honestly that I will probably watch again unless I'm in the mood for something really just visual, like that I can have on and like actually not really. Story wise, it was okay.
Right.
Visually, it melted my eyeballs with joy. So it's got that sort of. I have to be in the mood for that. And
imagine if you were in the theater.
I know. No, so I enjoyed it, and I would suggest others go to do the same.
Before, what do you the Oscar nominations are out and the Revenant is leading alongside Mad Max. How do you feel with the Revenant possibly being the front runner of, best picture, best actor, best director, best cinematography,
for being the only podcast about movies, I've sort of lost my love affair for the Oscars.
Sure. No love lost here.
About a decade or so of just the most predictable nonsense and the kind of the most racist nonsense. It's starting to wear very thin. And I don't particularly care. I would love to see Mad Max win because it's different.
Yeah.
And if I had to go on base pure enjoyment, I enjoyed Mad Max more than this movie. But that's not to say they both don't have their own home in that space.
Yeah.
If I had to look, if I was betting money on it, Revenant would beat Revenant would win more likely than Mad Max would win.
But you would be disappointed about that.
Yeah. Oh, on a personal level, but all the Oscars has been for me is disappointment for the last 3 or 4 years. So mostly there's been exceptions. I used to throw parties and stuff, guys. Like I used to get real into this shit. I had a red carpet with a green screen and interviews with my friends and all this shit and games and bullshit and prizes. And then
my sympathy for you has just gone to it's just turned into something else.
I used to love it, and now who sings that song? I used to love her, but I had to kill her. I used to love her, but I had to kill her.
Well, that was a song by Matthew Kroll. Let's never speak of it again.
Could be Elton Jones. I don't know.
It doesn't matter because you sung it now.
Yeah, it's all set up. Let's go.
I thoroughly enjoyed the film. My experience was I saw it in the cinema. I had the opportunity to see it on as a screener, but I opted away from that because I knew, and Jimmy's going to chastise me on my pronunciation, but Emmanuel Lubezki, Chivo.
Yeah,
it's a Guns N' Roses song. I'm sorry, it was bugging me. I'm back.
His name's definitely not Spanish though. It's I think he's what's his descent? Lithuanian?
I think it was Mexican. Anyway,
no. I mean, he's Mexican, but his name is not. Is
right, Lubezki.
Yeah,
it sounds Polish or something like that. Anyway, Chivo, as his nickname is one of the master cinematographers of our time. He shot so many movies that I love, like Children of Men, The New World, Y Tu Mama También, one of my favorite films of all time. So, for me, that was worth an experience to see in the theater, just as Birdman was, last year because of the DP and the combination of Inarritu. So that, I would urge anyone who has a interest in the technical side of filmmaking to go see this in a theater.
Sure.
And oddly, I think Jimmy and I talked about this briefly.
Cheater.
My experience of this was far richer than The Hateful Eight, which was so hyped for its theatrical experience.
Okay.
I found this to be a much richer, much fuller theatrical experience than The Hateful Eight.
Which is so interesting, is we talk about film as the supreme visual form, and then you see these two examples with the absolute best digital with this new Arri 65 camera and the best film supposedly, which is a large format film, but it's also it's antiquated because they pulled this format that hadn't been used in so many years, and you see the two against each other, and I think Arri 65 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with actual storytelling and the style of the film. I found The Revenant much more compelling than The Hateful Eight.
Oh.
But But what I found interesting about it was that I like to do this thing, which is that when something's based on a true story, I'll go back and I'll like read where the deviations are. And for example, last year, a film, Foxcatcher, which I don't know if many of you saw, I thought it was a really interesting, well-made film. But when I went and read what the actual story was about, what actually had happened in the real story, I kind of felt a little disappointed by the film. I felt disappointed by the way that the writers had taken what had actually happened and turned it into a narrative. And I thought that they'd done it in such a way that weakened what had actually happened. Now, in in the case of the Revenant, they've actually done the same thing, which is that there's a fair amount of invention with the Revenant. But I think it's invention for good narrative purpose. And I think the things that they've actually added to the story here, which we'll get into in spoilers, actually help the movie a lot. And for all the movie's bravado set pieces, and there are many of them, I think the most compelling moments in this film are about human survival and about moments where Glass is basically trying to figure out how to get out of the situation he's put in, and a lot of times I was like, how is he going to do this? How is this going to work? And
too much,
yeah, maybe a little too much. But the actual true story about what Glass did, and anyone can look this up, and it's not a spoiler for the film, but Glass crawled 200 miles on his feet to get back to the fort that he was at.
Crawled on his feet?
Yeah, he crawled on a broken leg.
On a broken leg. Okay.
For 200 miles.
Yeah, he crawled. He wasn't on his feet. He crawled.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, how do you crawl on your feet?
Yeah, so I think there are some problems philosophically with this film that I have.
Yes. But
on the whole, as an experience, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think Inarritu and
they're all butchering it.
I'm butchering all these titles, all these names. Okay, Inarritu and Chivo deserve an Oscar. I mean, who cares who deserves an Oscar or whatever that means. I know there's a lot of talk about, there's a lot of talk right now about like how difficult this production was and how much people had to endure in order to make this movie. Frankly, it's somewhat interesting, and I think you see it on screen, but at the same time, I think the work stands for itself, and it's such a powerful experience that I think it's worth seeing.
Gotcha.
Moving on.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I would be bold to go so far as to say that this is only worth seeing in the theaters. I mean, if you have an 8-foot screen in your living room, man, that's not bad, but it works as a visceral experience. I think it's rather poorly written, and I don't think it's a very successful film in other terms. But it's a very successful film in that regard, and I think you have to go to the theater to see this movie, and then it becomes an amazing experience and an amazing film ultimately because of that.
Do you think it's because just the larger clarity of it, or do you think it's because of actually experiencing it with a ton of other people, or is it a weird hybrid of both?
It's because the film is so well crafted as a visual and oral experience that it's totally immersive. And as what they're aiming for is to make, they kept the words that you keep seeing when they're interviewed is, they want it visceral, they want it immersive. And, and Chiyo, he does all these incredible visual techniques that are just, totally exquisite.
Yeah.
In order to just sink you into this world. And if you feel this world on a huge screen that's surrounding you with audio that's surrounding you, it sinks into you in the way that the film is intended to. And if you put that on a small screen, in front of you in your living room, and it's just not going to be immersive in the same way. And I don't think the film works in that way. It has to be a theatrical experience.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Well, what about, well, you've already mentioned that it had some story problems. Anything you want to elaborate on before we, without spoilers?
Well, I think it suffers from Hollywood syndrome, which is, over-explanation, over sentimentality. Mm-hmm. And I think that, it also has, it's a very simple story, a revenge story, which we've all seen, which should open up so much potential to then do all this amazing stuff. Because the story, there's not much to it. Everyone gets it. Mm-hmm. You're sitting there like, okay, he's driven by, his we don't want to do spoilers yet, right? So he's driven by certain things in his past and revenge.
Canadian Batman Begins.
Yep. And that allows you to do all this incredible stuff visually, which Iñárritu and Chivo do so well.
Beautiful pronunciation.
Well, no one else say it now.
No, I'm not. Bonjour.
We should just record
I'll jump in as you're saying the name.
Yeah, we should record a bunch of scratch tracks of Jimmy saying it, and we'll just leave it blank. Of course.
Yeah.
And that's what they do well. And there's when you just focus on that, on their strength, then the movie's incredible. But they then try to elaborate on the story, and they try to put all this sentimentality, and they keep reminding you, oh, remember, this is a revenge story. Like, yeah, I got that right away, and then that just weakens the movie. And it's not enough to destroy the movie and still worth seeing. But when you take away the element of the visceral, of the immersive, and you by shrinking it on a small screen and meager audio and on a TV set or something, then it's just not, it just doesn't have the impact, the effect that it's intended to have and that it needs to have, because it can't survive based on the other things.
Yeah. All right. I could see that. Again, and this might not me backpedaling or in my defense, but I think I got the closest to that as I possibly could.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, if you have an 8-foot screen in your living room,
and it's beaming me directly into my eyes.
I think like if you're gonna watch this at home,
you need a large screen and a good sound system.
It needs to be a cinematic experience. Yeah, so if you can recreate a cinematic experience in your house,
then
go for it. But it's not. It's still not as good.
At least turn the lights off.
At least turn the lights off.
But it's still not as good as the theater. And I would urge anyone, even you, go to the theater and watch this thing. It's really worth it. I mean, it changes the experience, and it is interesting to see it with other people, because it is so. I mean, it's sort of sensational, like that some of the violence and how you feel the violence and feeling people cringe, and there's these moments where everyone in there, you just hear this, you hear this movement in the seat, and that does add something to the experience, which is another element of it too. Sure.
Well, Jess, actually, speaking of seeing it with other people, you can talk about what you thought of the film, but you told such a wonderful story at lunch the other day about your in theater experience, Jess.
I had an experience no one else wants to have. Okay, so what I thought of is I really liked it. I think it's beautiful. I did like that. I felt it like physically and emotionally, like you're describing. It's like there were actual physical reactions that people were having to these horrible, traumatic, no spoilers things. We'll get there.
Spoiler alert: bad things happen.
Yeah, trauma happens. I think what's sort of rubbing people the wrong way is the cadence of it is not what we're used to. Like, we're used to things happening really, really fast, and that like fits into our day perfectly. And then all of a sudden something really, really slow like this feels more like a disruption to your day, rather than just like kind of like cruising along your day, going to the movie, seeing it, and then walking right out and then snapping back into how you would go on about your day as you would have before. It's because I think the reason that is because you feel the trauma that's happening, and it affects you like it would if it were happening to you, and it's pretty unique. You don't come across that very often.
Which is one of the greatest compliments to the filmmakers, I think. And it's true. And when the credits start rolling, no one's moving. It's just
it was really quiet.
Yeah. I heard from many people that it was a great movie, but it depresses you by the end. Like, it was just sort of like a
I don't even feel like it's depressing.
I wasn't depressed at all.
It's like what you're saying. It's like this feeling thing. So it affects you emotionally, but not in a depressive way. It just, you felt something that has shifted your energy or where you were, and now you have to deal with this new place you're in. It just takes you aback, and then you have to go out into society and face the world again after this experience. And it's
well, guys, it snowed today in New York, and I was really thinking about how I'm going to make it across the city. So this movie,
you lived it.
Yeah, this movie, I lived everything.
Yeah, but it
you don't need to pay $600 for the Oculus you hear. You actually lived it today.
It's so true, though. But it is usually like very traumatic things that happen to you that wake you up in that way, where you're like looking at the leaves on the tree and you're like, that tree has more leaves than I have years left in my life. Like,
Jesus Christ,
you like start thinking about like that kind of stuff. It's really morbid. But okay, let me tell you about what happened to me whenever I went to the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I went in. This came out in limited release here in New York, and so it was during that limited release time, and it was only playing at 2 theaters. And I went with my friend at like 3:00 on a Sunday, thinking that no one would really be there. And we got there early to make sure we got good seats. And we did the thing where like I held a seat for her and she went and got food and then we switched. And as people started pouring in, it turns out The Revenant was the frattiest thing we've ever done because there were it was
a frat boy movie.
Yes. And I had no idea that I was curious why there were so many bros there. And then my friend comes back from getting her popcorn and she's like, oh, yeah, like doesn't even bat an eye. And she's like, yeah, the bros made Leo their idol after Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh my!
Yeah, and so
which is the exact antithesis of what that film should do.
Yep,
that's exactly what she said too. Was they have no idea that he's like making fun of them. Yeah, but that kind of affected my whole experience because there was like a lot of like bro action happening throughout the movie, and the movie's pretty
a lot of high fives when people got hurt, or
a lot of like bro hair in the way, and then like checking, like having to like dodge around because they do a lot of like subtitles, and you're having to like look around like bro hair, and and then also one guy like next to my friend, he wasn't next to me, but he kept getting out his phone every 3 minutes and looked at sports scores.
Right. Yeah. So I think that has got less to do with the movie as opposed to the cinema. Like going to the movies this day is such a painful experience for me. I really dread it for for those reasons. I remember like you and I went to Pacific Rim and we had to like tell some people to shut the fuck up.
Which is weird to do at Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
But no, it's just it's very funny because these dudes who didn't understand the Wolf of Wall Street all dragged their girlfriends to the theater and made them see this thing that they thought, because now they love Leo, right? Like Leo's their little false god.
But would they love this? I mean,
no. Well,
I don't think they did.
No. Oh yeah. Okay. So they didn't.
They were checking sports scores.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah. It's kind of the movie you can kind of float in and out of. I mean, I feel like they would like certain parts of it, right? It's so
you can kind of, it's slow enough. It's slow enough though. Yeah, it's
slow. It's slow, but it's still like.
But the violence isn't like, well, I don't want to get into too much. I'd say like I would equate 20% of the violence to sort of a bro mentality, and the rest is just like painful, right? Like it's not like enjoyable violence, as weird as that statement sounds.
It's not like football. It's like training for football, right?
Wait a minute. mentally training for non-American football. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't know. The reason in telling that story, it was just a weird vibe in the movie the whole time. It was just
I had the opposite experience. I went to BAM, and it was a mix of people, quite a few older people, and they took it really seriously.
Yeah.
So people were really on edge and kind of.
Well, you got to remember
that it was sold out, so everybody's crammed together and.
This is the director of Birdman, like his follow-up film to Birdman with Leonardo DiCaprio's Oscar hope. So I feel like this is the movie people are going to take seriously, But yeah, the thing for me that's sad, and I think we kind of we've touched on it in terms of like the cinematic experience, is that if you don't pay attention to the quieter moments of this movie, you miss what this movie is entirely about. That's the way I feel, and that's the way I think Jimmy, and I'm putting words in your mouth here, but hey, we're friends. If you are just drifting out of this movie and you're not really immersed in it, you're just gonna see the violence and the revenge story without the kind of subtext that it has, which admittedly is problematic, but it is, to me, the more interesting stuff in the film.
Right.
I mean.
I can go anywhere for my violence, Shahir.
Right, yeah, you can go.
No, I liked it. I was there to hang. Like, I got it. I understood.
You broed out?
Yeah.
No, she anti-broed out.
I wasn't broing out. My friend and I were like isolated literally in the middle of the theater and we're surrounded.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like everyone else. There wasn't that solidarity in the room. During the action scenes, people were feeling it because you have to pay attention in those moments. But like you're saying, it's like in the quiet moments whenever you're really getting wrapped up in the story.
Then you got to know what's going on with sport ball or else. No offense to sport ball. I love sport ball. Actually, I don't. I just wish I did.
Right. So I think the general consensus, we all enjoyed the film. We all highly recommend it as a cinematic experience.
Right.
Yes. And actually, as we're almost at the halfway point without even getting into spoilers, look at us
4
go.
people.
I know. we should probably just get right into spoiler time.
So if you're listening in right now, this is the point. If you haven't seen The Revenant, you should probably switch the podcast off, go watch The Revenant, come back and join us later. Or if you have seen The Revenant, stay tuned for a spoilerific discussion.
And here we are yet again. Yeah, what basically happens is Belfort in round 2, he just comes back.
Jordan Belfort
comes back. Wait,
this
back.
is Jordan Belfort's great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Right, it's time travel piece.
Yeah.
No, I got nothing. It's
I really wanted to see you go with that.
You just go?
Yeah.
No. So, I mean, obviously what I was talking about before, and this actually isn't a spoiler, we could have talked about this before, but why not? Now everything's open. Production-wise, and is why, Jimmy, I'm excited to have you here, this whole thing with this, what camera was it?
It's the Area 65.
Okay, and they shot it all with natural light. Is that correct?
Yeah,
all in air quotes?
Exactly. Yeah, it's essentially. I mean, I think they cheated a little bit on the fire scenes.
Right. That makes sense.
I mean, it's not necessarily a cheat, but I think it's
no. I mean, in terms of it being 100% purely, and also, I don't know what natural light really means.
Well, so what I was wondering, so like, you see in the very beginning, because I knew that's what they did, and there's a scene of I think their initial hunting party when Leo, his son, Tom Hardy's character, and a couple people Tom Hardy's character's not there. The initial hunt where they're hunting for food, where the pet, like in the very beginning where their pelt base is, and they're out. They were stalking through the forest in one of the trillions of slow
great
things.
Shot. Yeah, amazing.
Now you see, it looks natural light, and then like you look in the distance, and there's the sunbeams coming through,
the fog.
and I'm wondering if those, for instance, those sunbeams. Now it was shot in natural light. Are those sunbeams and things added to it?
I think there's a lot of post work done.
I think so too, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
it's the camera is incredibly impressive to shoot the quality that they did without lighting the fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, natural light. I feel like lighting. Typically, with lighting, we're trying to accomplish what natural light does on its own.
Touché.
So, I feel like, especially in low budget films, for years I always try to shoot things around time of day, shoot at the right time, and it just takes a long time to do that. So people in Hollywood, you don't have time, so you just use artificial light to try to recreate what nature would give you. Oftentimes, I mean, that's not always the case.
And this took 11 months.
Sorry, 9.
Yeah,
9.
11. But there's a number of reasons for that as well. It has to do with they shot in Argentina and in Canada,
right?
To like travel for winters, and I think one of the things was that they wanted to be in remote locations, so. When they were getting, it would take them half the day to get to a location. Right. They would only be able to shoot for like an hour or two, and then it would take them the rest of the time to get out of that location.
Right. Gotcha.
And also, I mean, I think they're very specifically choosing the times that they're shooting.
Yeah, it seems
very specifically. Yeah. And so much of the film is shot, like this magic hour, which is right before the sunrise, right after the sun sets, or just as the sun is rising, just as the sun is, just before the sun sets, or the sun's super low on the horizon. And, but I think the amount of control that they're doing, I think with just bouncing light, just, bounce boards, shiny boards, mirrors and things. And then it's natural light, but it's like in the fire scenes, of course, like, I think they're taking, things on fire and moving them. It's like, so it's natural, but it's highly controlled.
It's natural, like things in the grocery store are all natural because technically everything is.
Right.
Yeah.
But so, because the other film that I kind of kept thinking about a lot during, in this conversation about natural light, and I think it signals a progression between the way we make films now, is Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon. And so the thing with Barry Lyndon was shot entirely in natural light, with natural candlelight. And they use these like NASA lenses.
These special lenses made that are so fast.
Yeah, f-stop 0.7, I think.
Because they're meant for the cold void of space.
Yeah, exactly. and Kubrick wanted to use them to shoot scenes inside castles entirely lit by candles. So he didn't want to put lights in at all, and he wanted to. I think his rationality was that he wanted to capture the essence of the castle as it would be lit by natural light, not lit by artificial light. Because he felt that was important to the story and the architecture that of the period.
And it's beautiful.
And it is beautiful. It's a beautiful looking film. But the conversation though with The Revenant has less to do with lenses and the RE, and I think has to do with more with post-production. Because the thing now is that you've got so much latitude in a digital negative. This is a 4K or 65. The equivalent of a 65 millimeter digital negative, so it's a huge amount of data.
How many Ks is that, Shahir?
Well, it shoots at 4K.
Well, yeah, but it's more than 4K because
it's more pixel dense than a Red camera. So
200K.
It's 6560 by 3102 resolution.
Yeah,
but that doesn't even account for the actual latitude of the light that you get. Like that is just the image size.
That's and resolution doesn't mean much in terms of image. But it's interesting because digital still doesn't have the latitude of film.
Well, of properly exposed film.
Of properly exposed film.
Yeah,
and properly exposed digital.
Yeah.
But go on. I'm curious.
Well, I was just going to say the thing. Now, first off, you've got someone like Chivo who knows how to light a scene.
Total beast.
I always call him wide angle Chivo because he shoots close ups with a wide angle lens.
This movie was insane. The lenses that he used were so.
I think, and we're gonna get slightly nerdy here, but I think it's like
no, we've already gone.
Wait, start now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I think just start getting nerdy now.
I mean, like for most films, you would have like a 12 mil in your arsenal, which you'll pull out like once or twice, and a 12 millimeter lens is like a super wide angle lens. And like your standard lens would be a 50 mil or a 35 or something along those lines. Chivo only has a 12 to a 21 mil range in this film. So he's shooting super wide on everything, which means like when he's getting, instead of shooting a close up with a 35 mil lens, which is probably the most flattering lens you can shoot a close up on, or a 50 or something like that, he's shooting it with a 12 millimeter lens, which is specifically designed for wide vistas and big landscapes. And he's shooting close ups of people's faces with that. That has this like slightly distorting effect, and it's a very unusual look to it.
Yeah, let's not nerd out too much. The sensor size plays into that too. But anyhow, it's this incredibly wide lens. But I felt the distortion wasn't like this typical lens distortion you'd see. It does have an odd effect.
Yeah.
Partially because it just is so close. I mean, you see, you see like Leo's breath fogging the lens. You see blood splatter on the lens. I mean, this is happening throughout the movie. He's so close. I mean, I was just thinking to myself, like, how many times did Leo bump his head on the camera? The choreography is amazing.
I mean, to shoot 12 millimeter and to get a close up, the size of which, to have Leo's head that big in the frame means the camera literally has to be millimeters away from his face at times, which means that the choreography between the camera and the actors is so tight. And there are like
and the horses.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some beautiful horse shots in this film.
I love the horse eyeball close-ups.
Oh, yeah.
But the choreography it's interesting to me that the choreography of this film harkens back to the gimmick in Birdman, which is the single take, long extended
that's
track.
kind of Chivo's thing. He's been doing that forever. He did that in the one
Beautiful.
where the car, Children of Men, right?
That's Alfonso Cuarón.
No, but Chivo I'm talking about.
Yeah, Chivo shot that.
And this is sort of Chivo's, I feel like so much of his style is these long takes that just sink you into the film, and that one, and he's actually was I've heard in some kind of interviews, he said that he was disappointed ultimately in that shot with the long one with the car, which they did all this stuff where you could remove doors
Children
and
of Men
seats and it's carefully planned, and because people really paid attention to that, and he doesn't want you to notice this stuff. It's intended to immerse you into the film, and if you notice it, he feels like he's failing.
I feel like because it's just not normal, people, no matter who you are, those type of things will kind of pull you out a little bit, even if it's just like, that's cool.
The dude's won 2 Oscars now, is about to win his 3rd probably. Everyone notices his work at this point.
Well, I mean, to me, that's the success of The Revenant, is his work, but I guess I'm getting at is that's something that he's been working on for years now and years, which is developing this one take immersive experience. And there he felt it was less accomplished because it was noticed. So his intention is not to have these things noticed. And I don't think a lot of common viewers would notice in The Revenant, for instance.
The bear attack is all single take, and I don't think that people would pick that out.
Right.
You feel it. You feel like everything what he accomplished his goal there in doing that. But I don't think if you ask someone from the theater, did you realize that was a single take? They would be like, yes.
Right. And I think to me, the success of it is exactly what you're talking about there, which is that in Birdman, I felt the gimmick, and I felt it was a gimmick beyond the movie. Whereas this employs a lot of the same techniques, but it doesn't feel like a gimmick. It feels very part of the texture of this film.
Right. And I didn't see Birdman. I think that's probably why it doesn't bother me.
And I think that Chivo initially was I don't want to say opposed, but I don't think he really agreed with shooting Birdman and artistically agreed with shooting Birdman in one shot. And eventually he came around to think that it could work. But I know that he had some resistance to that. And I think that, I mean, he's just this amazing artist, has incredible sensibility and it's a very sophisticated sensibility.
Hey, well, you got to be careful what you get good at. If you don't like it, then you don't get good at it, because that's all people are going to want you to do.
I mean, like he shoots for Terrence Malick all the time, and Terrence Malick's films have gotten more increasingly beautiful.
That's hard to believe, right?
Yeah, hard to believe given that where he started from. But yeah, so I mean, that was my feeling about. Was there anything else like before we get into the actual narrative of it? Or did you,
Well, I have a question for you guys. So to me, this looked photographically very real. And it's, but I was surprised to hear you talk about the distortions and the fact that you picked up that things were done in post, because to me, it looked so real, and maybe that's what's important, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the thing in post that I was referring to was the fact that if you're shooting in natural light and say you don't have a fill light on an actor, in post you can increase, the range, the dynamic range
with
of that.
The latitude that they actually
and
have.
the times of day that he shot, I think he had, you're talking about the latitude. I think that they picked the perfect times of day to shoot this stuff, and I think that allowed them to do certain things in post. And I mean, I really don't know, but I think that certain fog effects were added in post and things like that, and certain
bears,
light streaks and things.
And buffalo and wolves.
Well, that gets me to my one major criticism visually of this film is I really. It's kind of interesting because, their goal, and Chivo as the DP, specifically his goal is to make something as natural and real as possible. And I think he accomplished that to such a high degree that then some of the effects, some of the CGI stuff, I felt was really fake. I felt the animals were horribly fake. And I mean, this is one of the worst insults I could say to my boy Gio there. I don't want to insult it anyway, but I mean, it's not him doing that work. But, as in Gravity, which, that's all this CGI stuff, and he's controlling all that. So he must have had a hand in this stuff as well. But I thought because he accomplished such naturalism, such, this feeling of it being real, that when it wasn't real, except for like the subtle stuff like maybe fog effects, I could buy all that easily. But so many of the animals in there, just like, God, and like the opening shot you were talking about, they come on, there's like this elk there or something. I mean, it looked really fake to me.
And every animal. I will say this, with the exception of the bear. I think obviously they gave the bear a lot of. Well, here's the thing. I mean, how many of you have seen a bear? Have seen a brown bear like in person?
I mean, in like the zoo? Or?
No, but like in front of. Oh, sure, in the zoo.
Other than the time I was attacked by one.
We have nice. We in New Hampshire, we have brown bears. We have them all over the place. I've seen them a lot. Not that big. That thing was fucking huge because they needed to make it a monster. Yeah. But I've seen them run. I've seen them stand. I've seen them do all this stuff. To me, that bear, while they exaggerated some features to it, also felt the movement of it felt very real. Everything else, every other animal in that thing. Now, granted, I haven't seen bison or buffalo or whatever the fuck those things were being eaten by the wolves. That scene in particular was awful when he comes over the top of the hill
I
and
totally
he sees
agree.
all the animals and the wolves are attacking the one. I was like, this is some fucking amateur hour shit. And
I didn't feel any of this.
I felt that as well. I felt that about the bear, man. I really felt the bear. And I did think about this after. I was like, I've never seen a bear attack someone. And
I've never seen a bear attack someone.
So what part of my problem was like the realism of the attack, but Chivo, I guess, found a video of a bear attack, and they staged some of this based on this video, which I haven't seen. I want to try to see if I can hunt it down now. But
Werner Herzog's Grizzly Man.
That's attacking. That's kind of. I did think of Grizzly Man, and where's the guy from Grizzly Man?
Mm-hmm.
He's dead.
He died. Yeah, he got eaten by a bear.
Yeah, he got eaten by her. But I just felt like the play that the bear had with Leo and all this stuff, it just felt so staged, so fake, and just the movement. And it was on some of the harder movements of the bear, when the bear would move more quickly, would pounce and put its paw on his head and just smash his back and all these sorts of things. I just thought, God, this is so fake.
They do that. That's the thing,
right?
too.
But what's the human's reaction to that? Is it just like, oh, or I mean, that doesn't seem like realistic.
This movie, and I'll get into it more. I don't want to sort of jump into this yet, but there's a lot of things with Leo's character in particular that I feel, Shahir, that you, and I don't know how you feel about this stuff. We'll get into it. You normally rally against a lot of things story-wise and sort of the way characters act-wise in this movie. you normally rally against this stuff and you call it kind of convenience for story's sake, for moving the script along.
Right.
There's a lot of that in this movie, and I think a lot of the, even now I'm getting sort of into a real nitty-gritty part, but with that bear attack. By the way, so what happens is Leonardo DiCaprio is out after they get attacked by Indians at their pelt base. They have to get on a boat and get away from Indians. They've been trying to get these pelts. They got hired by the military or something to get these pelts for whoever. That's their job. Tom Hardy's kind of a dick in this. I'm just trying to go through the whole thing. Then they get on the boat. They ditch the boat to kind of get rid of the Indians. They think the Indians will follow the boat down the river, and they make camp at this place, and they have to trek across the mountains. And while they do this, they set up camp, and Leonardo DiCaprio's character goes out to, I guess, hunt. I don't quite remember. And then he gets attacked by a bear. That's where we're at.
A very real bear.
Yeah, he sees 2 baby bears.
And then he's like, oh shit, that means there's a mama bear, and there absolutely was a mama bear. So there's a big long shot of Leo getting his ass beat to fucking hell by this bear. Now, the way the bear attacks...
He wins.
He does win, because he's the only one alive. He does a lot of stupid... That was something that bugged me about this was... And again, you never know how you're going to react to a fucking bear attack, right? But he's in the story, he has... a half Native American son. Back in the day, you get these flashbacks of like his old life with his Native American wife, and then there's some tragedy happened and she dies. You're not quite sure yet at this point in the film what happens, and so now he's with his son. But he's kind of the trope of the magical white man in this sort of scenario.
Yeah. He's the dances.
Right?
He's
dances with wolves.
Yeah.
So he's supposed to have all this information, right? Like he's supposed to know all this shit to the point where there's a moment later in the movie that I'll talk about that I wanted to punch whoever wrote it in the face. But so he's supposed to be that guy, right?
Yeah. Only one?
He does a lot of things in that bear attack that I was always taught not to do. When in the woods, and if you encounter a bear, he first of all tries to be
These weren't New Hampshire Indians.
I know. He tries to be sneaky in the beginning and like get his gun up quick, and obviously the bear sees him and he can't do it, and he gets nailed on the ground. Then you are actually supposed to play dead, which he does. He gets his ass beat. It grabs him by the back and whips him around. It does that dog thing where they try to like break you by whipping you back and forth. And then it pins down on the ground. He acted dead and the bear walked away. Then he does something real fucking stupid, starts to move and grab his gun again. When he could have honestly just either stayed there and left, unless there was the thing I was thinking about is what if the mama bear was trying to feed the cubs? Like if he wanted that dead to feed the
They were really close, yeah.
Yeah. So I think the mama bear leaves to go over to the cubs to check on the cubs and maybe even have the cubs come back and be like, yeah, here's dinner. So Leo, instead of grabbing, I believe, his knife right away, grabs his gun and tries to shoot the charging bear again in the face. If you shoot a bear in the face with a low caliber weapon, and these are old weapons, so I'm guessing it's pretty fucking low caliber, all it does to the bear is piss it off.
Which it does.
Which it does. Now, luckily, eventually in the scene, you see he actually got him in the neck, which eventually saves him from this attack. So there's a lot of sort of conveniences that happen around
this whole movie is very convenient.
Well, yes. But I wouldn't damn Hugh Glass's character for not having been to Boy Scouts at this point. It's 1820s America.
But he also lived
beyond Boy Scouts.
He's beyond Boy Scouts. They're setting him up in this movie like he just knows shit. He knows the wilderness. That's his job on this expedition.
That's what he's doing there.
But in the real story, this did happen, and he did win the bear fight, and he did fire at the bear, and defeat the bear. So I mean that actually happened.
Sure.
Right, but the staging of it.
I could argue.
I felt the staging of it was. It felt very fake to me. Again, I don't know facts about this. I don't know how bears attack, but it felt fake to me. And I thought that some of it was the CGI stuff, but also just the dramatic action of it. I just thought
I have no I have no empirical evidence to suggest that what Leo did would just get you killed. I'm sure it probably would. But I felt that scene was so well staged that I didn't I just bought into what was happening with his character at that moment.
100% that could have happened frame accurately when it happened to the real dude back in the day. It absolutely could have.
We could check the tapes. I'm sure.
No, bring it back. Roll it back.
I mean, this is not the greatest flaw in the film. I think we can move on and get to something more important.
I would also give him the excuse he's being attacked by a bear, and so you might panic a little bit and not do what you're trained to do.
Sure.
That's very generous.
I'll give him that.
100%. So
listen, Leo, I don't know who taught you how to be in the woods. You fucking get your shit together.
And maybe they back then there was, the funny thing is too though, and now I'm sort of talking about it, I don't want to hang on this too much, but maybe back then there were different sort of ways to deal with bears that maybe he reacted to the same way like Native Americanly that he would have been taught to react to a bear. I don't know. We know now sort of things that maybe I don't fucking.
I don't think we know things like that.
But here's the thing. Just one point. The thing that's interesting to me in the film is the addition of Hawk, his
son.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio, Hugh Glass's Pawnee son.
Side note: I could only think about Parks and Recreation when they kept saying Pawnee, the Pawnee Indians, because it's the town, and Parks and Recreation is Pawnee.
I was doing the same thing. Anyway, the thing that I was, because the film is so much about fathers and sons, and again, I've just had a baby.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Is it?
Yeah, and so the thing that was interesting to me in the bear attack was the cubs, and I was actually on. So when
were you on Team Bear?
It wasn't so much that I was on Team Bear, but I was kind of like, when I saw the cubs and I saw that the bear had been killed, my heart went out. That what I felt bad for was the fact that these cubs had been orphaned. And I didn't, so to me, that was what was interesting about it, was the staging of the scene around the cubs and the fact that he'd seen the cubs. And then, he knew immediately what that meant. And then he kills this bear, and then we see the cubs. The last image we see is of the cubs. And so, to me, what works in that scene is the staging, the central single take that leaves us with this image of the cubs. And it might just be that I'm a new dad, but that,
no, that's absolutely from a visual storytelling. I totally think that's on purpose. I think there's a weird dichotomy there that to his sort of story with his son and all that jazz. I mean, sure, let's go with yes.
Yeah. I feel like this is about our relationship with the wilderness, because I think that there's things that happen with nature that are just nature in action. Like we see the buffalo stampede, we see the wolves. I think there's an avalanche.
Yeah.
And none of those are consequential. Like nothing that doesn't really even affect Leo's character, or sorry, Hugh.
Yeah.
Hugh Glass.
It's Leo.
It doesn't even really affect him. We see a lot of just nature in action. And then at the end of this, whenever, it's like no matter, after Tom Hardy dies and sorry, just jumped right to that.
Yeah.
And
which didn't happen in real life.
Which didn't happen in real life.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like nature is just going to keep on being nature. Like it won't matter now that these people are gone.
I always think about a Lars von Trier film, Antichrist, where one of the lines in that film, or I think maybe one of the liner notes about that film, was that von Trier was talking about the fact that nature is indifferent to human suffering.
Yes.
Like we can suffer as much as we want and nature don't give a shit. And I think the interesting thing to me in this film wasn't so much the addition of it was the addition of the sun, but it was the way that this film kind of plays with two different philosophical outlooks on God, and the way Western culture looks at God as a singular entity, and even the rejection of God, which Tom Hardy's character John Fitzgerald talks about at some point. I saw God was a squirrel and I ate that fucker, and then at some other point he says, "I should be. I've saved your life twice now, which means I am God to you," versus a slightly more, I want to say, Aboriginal approach to God, which is God is in nature itself, which is that God is simply indifferent to our lives. And I think the film kind of plays with those two dichotomies, even towards the end of the film, where Leonardo DiCaprio, where Hugh Glass is about to kill.
Revenge is in God's hands.
Yeah, and he tosses him into the water and says, "Revenge is in the hands of the Creator, not mine."
Which, by the way, was pretty weak. But
no, I mean, I bought it.
He throws him in the water
weak sauce
to the already stabbed and beat the shit, and he throws him to the Indians.
Well, no, but I think he does.
That's his epiphany moment.
Well,
come on.
Okay, so he does. I think what he's doing there, and it is kind of problematic because he does it in the face of these Native American tribes who are ready to kill him. But what he's doing, the way I read that was that he is going to offer Fitzgerald's a chance at life in the same way that he took his chance at life. That's the way I read that scene.
Hold on.
Why would that not be the case?
Listen, Canadian Batman Begins. I'm going back. First I thought it was a joke. I'm actually legitimately serious.
Yeah.
Has everyone seen Batman Begins?
Yes.
I'm aware of the Batman mythology.
Okay, no, don't worry about that. So Liam Neeson's character, Ra's al Ghul, and Batman are fighting on an out-of-control train. And there's this whole thing where they're fighting, and then Batman hasn't killed, and the train's getting derailed, and it becomes very clear that because bombs and things that Batman did and things falling, that basically they're all going to die unless they get out of there. And Batman's last line to Ra's al Ghul before this train rails into a fucking building is, "I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you." And then he bat zips away, and his conscience is clear because he, quote, didn't kill him.
Yeah.
He fucking killed him.
Right.
Leo's
exactly
character,
right.
this whole let's leave revenge in God's hands.
Yeah. Let me chase you,
poetic sentiment.
For
and he has that epiphany, sure, but at the same time, it's the epiphany of, oh, well, the water might kill him, or maybe these Indians will kill him. I don't have to kill. Like, it's
convenient to have an epiphany after it doesn't matter.
But in the beginning of the whole thing with the film is that Leo is left for dead, and by all accounts, he should be dead. He literally drags himself back up out of a grave. He should have died.
Sure.
And so to me, like even the title of the film, The Revenant, the man who comes back from the dead, him tossing him that way is kind of him saying, I will, revenge is in the hands of the creator, not me.
In case your multiple stab wounds and the rough river the Indians don't kill you, you're set.
Hey, there's a million things that should have killed Leo and he didn't die. Hugh Glass's character, and he didn't die.
Right.
Yes.
So,
but no. But if that's true, one more thing. What if that's true, then he should have just left him on that bank to bleed out and maybe try to crawl back himself instead of throwing him to three definite forms of death.
Yeah.
Sure. I would. Yeah. I would.
He could have even somehow, pleaded that they don't kill him or something because he had that power, obviously, from having helped the girl. So, I mean, I think his moment of that epiphany, First, I was starting to cringe, and then I was like, I think I can buy this. And then it was that as soon as he put him in the water, he looks at the Indians, then he grabs the body and he struggles, and he's got a messed up hand, messed up foot. He's like all beat the shit, and he drags him in the water, and there you go. I mean, that was the problem.
But just remember one other thing that happens, which is that Leo, Hugh Glass's character himself, probably feels like the Indians are going to kill him, but they don't because he ends up being the person who rescued their daughter. Daughter.
I knew they weren't going to kill him. He didn't know that.
Chief writer's convenience.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, no.
Again,
this is where the film gets philosophically problematic, and it's something that you mentioned earlier, which is that Leo plays the Hugh Glass character is rewritten, and this was not the case in history, as the white man with native affection, like
Dances with wolves.
Yeah, he's the Dances with Wolves. He's
or the Avatar for those of you.
Yeah,
in
the Avatar, the Lone Ranger, even.
It's Fern Gully. We watched Fern Gully.
So to me, the film gets problematized by that. But Jess, go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, we've been rolling over.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's okay.
We're burrowing out here.
You're surrounded.
No, I was just gonna say that. I had written down in my notes that Fitzgerald and Glass become the same person at the end.
Yeah.
And Fitzgerald keeps saying, that's Tom Hardy's character, he keeps saying throughout the movie that he's not afraid of death and that he has nothing to live for and he doesn't care. And then Leo gets to that point too. And I'd also written down he dies spiritually when his wife dies, emotionally when his son dies, and then literally physically dies.
Yeah. It comes back.
Yeah. Well, not literally, but and then comes back. And all that's left is vengeance. And then whenever
Fitzgerald says to him as well, right before that moment, he says, I hope you've earned your revenge. Mm-hmm. I hope you enjoy it. It won't bring back your son.
Uh-huh.
And I that to me was the crux of the film.
Yeah.
The reason why Leo throws him into the water.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
revenge?
No. Leo, Hugh Glass's character is essentially saying, it's not up to me.
Well, if he was saying that, he wouldn't have done anything. He would have got up and walked away.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have thrown him in the water to die, or then let him float to the Indians he winked at to die.
But by all accounts, Hugh Glass should have died himself by a number of things that happened to him.
Yeah, I think he was expecting to die.
Yeah.
If I had read this, I would have been looking for a better screenwriter.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Screenwriter. Okay.
It's Inarritu and Mark. I forget the other.
The writer is credited for Vacancy.
Yeah.
Is like the number one film that they're like known for. Which,
oh, really? And it's based on a book as well. So Mark Smith wrote, Vacancy 2, The Hole, Vacancy, Martyrs, and The Revenant. Yeah, it's quite a jump to go from Vacancy to The Revenant, but
there was a lot of writer problems with this film. Where this film excels visually, it stumbles a lot narratively.
Yes.
And a lot of ways, again, and here's the thing, Shahir, you've trained me in your hating fun ways. You've trained me to look for these things because, and I think this is the difference in the dumb action movies that I like, right? Yeah. I think because of it's a dumb action movie, I don't care about smaller things. Jurassic World, everyone acts like a fucking idiot, so the plot moves on because the movie is big and dumb.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about the second thing that I have issue with when a movie is so wonderful that it's like 90% perfect and then it doesn't stick a particular thing. That stands out and makes me damn the movie more than a okay movie that fucked up a little bit.
Yeah.
So in this case, with these fucking some of the best cinematography I've ever seen, with the technical acumen to pull off this entire film, just gorgeous, wonderful actors giving phenomenal performances.
Yeah.
But when you have these conveniences that are normally reserved for big dumb action movies to be the driving force of your film, that really threw me out.
So what I'm okay, so I remember there was one moment in the film where like and it was like, I was like, oh wait, how did that happen? He crawled he was crawling across the top of this cliff.
Sure.
And then, he was like looking down at the Missouri River, and the next shot he's at the river. And I was like, wait a minute, how the fuck did that happen?
That's a jump.
The one where he's sleeping, and after he helps the girl, and he's sleeping under this tree, and then he wakes up, and then there's suddenly an arrow, and they're right on top of him. He jumps on the horse and rides and falls off. I mean, that is absolutely and completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, again, the story, we know this entirely. The injuries he sustained, and I don't know the time differential, so you can play with sort of how long things took.
Yeah.
The time differential of his injuries that he receives aren't enough, even if like, again, this is me nitpicking reality in a film. That's dumb. But like that, it just was like, oh, when he had to walk, he just could sort of walk and limp.
Right, I know. It kept,
But I'm talking about more even specifically. I'm talking about randomly running into I guess it was the French who had the Native American woman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then he decides to free the Native American woman. Then, for no reason, he stuck around the other Native American guy he ran into conveniently to feed him. Then all of a sudden he just leaves the Native American woman somewhere else because story, why not? And then it just so happens that at the climactic battle of him and his adversary, that his entire resurrection revenge, his fucking Scorpion from Mortal Kombat story is coming to fruition. All of a sudden, that exact tribe with the father who's kind of looking for that daughter he rescued comes through, and that's what spares him while murdering his adversary.
This kind of the film that reminds me of is Training Day. At the end of Training Day, like a character like bumps into another character who he's happy to save.
I didn't mind that Training Day.
And to be fair, I didn't mind it in this film because I felt like it wasn't out of the blue as much as everything was set up. It's bad set up, but it is set up.
There's this other thing that we see all the time, which I think, I see it in the roots in a weaker Kurosawa film called The Hidden Fortress, which apparently was the an inspiration for Star Wars. And then you see Star Wars like kicked off this whole trend. And apparently Kurosawa had this team of writers to make Hidden Fortress. He walks in, he says, okay. And he would set up an impossible situation. And every night he would go home and think of an impossible situation, and he'd go to this team of writers and say, now they're in a cave and they're surrounded by all these samurais. How do they get away? And then the writers would have to write them out of this impossible situation. Then he would give them another one. And this idea, this mentality, which Gravity I thought was one of the worst examples of this, it's horrible. It's like, and I thought this film suffered from that too. It just doesn't. It often doesn't work. Even Kurosawa didn't quite pull it off, in my opinion.
It didn't need to do half of the things it did conveniently to do the what I feel the driving force into the story they were trying to tell. It didn't need any of that.
Exactly.
But this weird Hollywood bullshit that you normally rally against here seeped its way into this movie.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
I guess the difference here is, to me, is that even though, I can agree with you that some of the setup is bad, I still feel like it was still set up. And for me, the problem here, hold on, the thing is if a film sets me up to believe an underlying worldview or an underlying level of logic, then I will accept whatever happens in that, as long as the logic holds. And to me, the things that you've described, the logic holds, even if they are inconceivable Perhaps.
You're literally arguing my argument in the Jurassic World review. You know that, right?
No, but
you are. That's exactly. We are arguing the exact opposite. And my point is,
the difference is I don't believe the logic of Jurassic World in any way, shape, or form.
So you believe because they showed a random Indian father looking for his daughter twice?
Yeah,
that this
I do believe that.
End.
I completely believe that.
Whereas you don't,
because the script sets that up and then pays it off.
Don't you expect it at the end too? Don't you expect that to be the case?
Yeah,
is that she's going to bail him out?
Yeah, I expect that character to turn up.
As soon as he saves her,
obvious. It's so poorly done.
It's so obvious and so unneeded.
This is the over-explanation thing too. Like the Indian father looking for his daughter. Like how many times does he have to say? Every time they're going to move, maybe they have my daughter.
Well,
maybe she's there.
I think
and then the other Indian that he runs into that helps him, and he's able to finally get these words out, and he says, they killed my son, and he's I too have lost my family. Or he's like, come on, are you
I think
serious?
that's part of the
terrible.
I think that to me is part of the on the one hand, a positive of this film, which is that idea, like I'm sure this is probably a term that's out in the world, but narrative appropriation. So where you're taking a true story and then appropriating it into a different form for a purpose. And I think, like, for example, when I mentioned Foxcatcher earlier, I think Foxcatcher does a poor job of appropriating a true story for an alternate story that doesn't work. In this case, I think they do that because they want, one of the things, like if you look at films, like classic Westerns, like The Searchers, for example, is that their portrayal of Native Americans is really poor. And this film is going out of its way to have scenes with Native Americans with agency. And the one scene that's important with that father is when he meets the French, Toussaint, I think, and says to them, "You've stolen everything from us. I'm going to take your horses. Try to stop me." And I think that's the most important.
And when he stands up and talks about how you've stolen everything from us, again, it's this forced dialogue, this forced writing. And the thing that pisses me off about a movie like this is kind of like we were saying, this certain percentage of how accomplished it is, that I feel like if you give this to a good writer for a day, he can clean all this stuff up and then go spend 9 months shooting the thing and making it brilliant. And just need one day with a good writer. It's like,
which is odd because also
guys.
I had the opposite problem with Birdman, which is I felt that it had a narrative flaw that I didn't really buy into. We're not going to. Do you want to get into Birdman?
We're already at an hour. We'll probably go another 20 minutes.
Yeah. But Jess, I feel like you're like itching to say something, to jump in here.
Oh no, I guess we forgive movies that do what we're talking about whenever they look more fake. I think that this is getting a lot of criticism because it looks so real. So you expect more from the story. Because it looks real, you expect the story to feel more real. But that's not, it's like what Shahir's saying, that's not what they're setting up for us. Like you have to accept what they set up from the very beginning, which was that things are going to conveniently happen.
Yeah.
And I felt like I knew what was going to happen throughout the movie, and I wasn't mad at it. I was just like, this is what this movie is, and it's an experience. And I feel like for all of like the 3D and like blockbuster type stuff that banks on trying to give us an experience, this did that by just bringing it back to the minimal.
Yeah. And like for me, the most powerful moments were when he was trying to solve small problems.
Yes, right.
That's where this movie.
But that's the problem. It could have been. We were talking about like you just keep it simple because you don't need. They overwrite this.
It doesn't need the Hollywood
doesn't need all that crap
that other movies
because it's an
kind of
experience.
need.
Yeah.
And because it's so accomplished, it just makes it really annoying that they screw that up. It's but I agree. I mean, again, like I totally recommend this movie. It's an absolute experience. It's a phenomenal cinematic experience. You have to go see it. But if we're really going to dig into this as a great film or not, like these are major problems.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like they're trying to put focus and emphasis on things that other movies that you're going to see aren't putting emphasis and focus on, and I felt like it did a good job of that. But yeah, I see.
It depends on what you compare
your
it
side,
to, right? Are you comparing it to Batman or
there's a lot of similarities
Jurassic
to
Park?
I
think we are comparing it to Batman.
Yeah.
But do you compare it to Jurassic Park, or do you compare it to like Last Year at Marienbad? There's a great film in history that is also a cinematic experience, and which way do you go?
I think I'm comparing it to
somewhere in the middle
that move really fast. I think it goes back to like the cadence for me. Like it goes back to, we're used to quick montages, and we want as much of an experience as in a short amount of time as possible. And this is giving you, it almost plays out in real time,
Yeah.
Not
or it
quite.
tries. I think it tries
with
to
jumps. With jumps.
I think it plays out linearly.
It tries to feel like it's playing out in real time.
Yes.
I think it plays out linearly, but not necessarily in real time.
No, because literally to heal the way he healed would have to be months.
Well, the true story took months.
But I think to the filmmakers and everyone involved's credit, it does give you that feeling of feeling like you're going through this experience in a similar amount of time that he did. And I think a lot of that has to do with the smaller moments that we all brought up that we said we liked.
Yeah, and I think, and the way Tua filmed it too. Or the way that they filmed it, right?
Yeah.
Cauterizing the wound on his neck with gunpowder.
Right, that was.
That's.
Great.
I mean, that's such a great little scene, you know.
Yeah.
And then
looking for food and
eating grass and all that shit.
Yeah, I think that's
cutting open a horse and then climbing in it like a goddamn
tauntaun. Yeah.
So something I realized we're at an hour, and the main, we didn't even set this up. The main thing is Tom Hardy's character. What was his name?
Fitzgerald
is basically kind of a scumbag who is set to set. He's kind of a scumbag. You don't think
Shahir just had a physical reaction.
No, I thought one of the most interesting things about his character was I completely understood his point of view the entire way through. I was like, if this was just 1 degree of a slightly different movie, he would be the good guy.
I thought he was a complex enough character. I thought he was a more interesting character. Like the captain, I thought was really weak.
I thought
performance was weak, and the writing of his character is weak. But I thought his character was really well written.
In the first half of the film, I could see where you would maybe think he's not a pure scumbag. Like he's trying to survive, and he got hired for this job, and he feels like he's getting screwed. But the way they kind of butter him up to be the scumbag and eventually steal all the money and run away like a real scumbag. But the way they sort of butter him up in this film is kind of laughable because he gets into a random altercation before Leo even gets attacked by the bear. He starts harassing him about his Indian son, his Native American son, and so you already get like, oh, he's the bad guy, and then he decides to stay back to keep the money from the other. Basically, when Leo gets injured, the party decides they can't move on with carrying him around, so they were going to deliver the pelts and go get help, and they wanted 3 people to stay with Leo and 2. Leo's kid, some other random young person, and this bad guy who's already determined that he fucking hates him decide to stay back because he'll get a lot of money to do it. Sure, great. You know for a fact he's looking for any moment to kill them and leave them and come back as a hero that fought valiantly, survived, get his money, and leave.
It's true.
Then he eventually murders. Yeah. Now, here's the thing: how you can relate to him and how he's not a.
It's not that I can relate to him. I just think that his rationalization is kind of sound in that moment, which is you are gonna if there's 3 of you trying to get through the wilderness and one of you is near death. The humane thing is to put that person to death.
Sure, but he's not doing it for humane reasons. He flat out murders. Leo's the son because he saw him trying to humanely, quote unquote, kill the father after he basically tricking him with this whole blink if you want to die.
That's one of those moments in the theater where everybody laughs.
Oh, really? My experience
in a good way.
My experience was that
when he
says
blink again, everyone's like.
All I was doing was holding my eyes open and trying not to blink. I was like,
me too. I was like, he has to blink. That's it. It's not gonna work.
How long can I hold my eyes?
You just inevitably have to blink.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the other Hollywood problem is they're afraid of duality. Everything's so singular. It's like, this guy's good, this guy's bad. And that's another thing this film suffers from. And I think because Hardy played the role so well and Leo played his role so well that although they're really singular characters, it works. And that which is the problem I had with the captain, that he's so singular, but I thought his performance was weaker too. But there isn't, that is another issue I have with the film. It's like, where's this complexity of in theme and so the depth philosophically if you're looking at the film, but and also just in each character and in all levels of the film.
Well, the other film that does this kind of rationalization of survival much better is Meek's Cutoff, the Kelly Reichardt film, which is about Meek's Cutoff was kind of a revisionist Western which came out a few years ago. It has what's her name, who used to be married to the guy who played the Joker. I'm going blank on.
Michelle Williams.
Michelle Williams was in it. Kelly Reichardt, the filmmaker, she did Old Joy, and the film basically is about the traveling caravan of people who are trying to get to California, and they run out of water, and the whole film is about making those equations, how far can we survive and who needs to die or who needs to live in this equation. And I think if you're looking for a film that has the kind of duality in it, the kind of moral duality that played for a more intellectual purpose, then Meek's Cutoff is something that you'll probably really enjoy. But it's not as exciting a film, and it's not as geared towards the frat boys, in the crowd, or even the Oscar, like contendership of films. It's not geared towards that sort of thing. It's more of a anti-Western, anti-establishment kind of film.
See, I want Iñárritu and Lubezki to get that script and put their talents to. I think Iñárritu, is a great director. I don't think he's a good writer. I have so many in all of his films. I have a problem, and I think that he's not a very good writer. But I think he is an exceptional director if you can separate that from writing, which is hard to do. But technically in his performances, I think he does this amazing things. And I wish that someone would give him a really good script that he wouldn't touch, but they would explain to him what it means, and they could engage with him on like the complexities of it, and then let him execute that with you.
Well, I had this interesting experience with Iñárritu because he's one of the trio of Mexican filmmakers, Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuarón, and Iñárritu are the three Mexican filmmakers that have like made a huge impact in Hollywood. And I've always thought that Guillermo del Toro is kind of the fantasy filmmaker. Alfonso Cuarón is to me the true artist, and Iñárritu is somewhere in between. But I used to teach film studies and I used to teach auteur theory, and the best tool I had for teaching was these really weird films that BMW commissioned back in the day, the BMW short films.
Yep, I remember that.
And there were, and here's the thing though,
shorts.
And so basically the premise there is that they had Clive Owen as the driver who'd be driving a BMW, and they had like all these amazing directors come in and direct one short film for each of them.
So good.
I will say, I thought all of them were terrible.
I loved them.
Like Guy Ritchie did one, Wong Kar-wai did one, Iñárritu did one.
Where's the one where Gary Oldman plays the devil? Who did that one?
I think that's Ang Lee's one.
No.
I'm pretty sure that's
It did not feel like Ang Lee at all. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That one's the best.
Either way, I thought they were all terrible, except for Iñárritu's one, which was basically, he did one of the boldest things I think I've ever seen a commercial filmmaker do, which was that all these films were basically commercials for BMW. And in Iñárritu's film, he took the BMW across the border and had the driver drive the car through one of the poorest villages in Mexico and have everyone look at this car as a symbol of like everything that is wrong in the world today. And it was like,
he got away with that.
And he got away with it. And it was kind of amazing. So I always thought he was a filmmaker that had something to, he had a lot on his mind, but he wasn't, to me, like you're saying, he didn't quite, I think he never quite delivered narratively on his political instincts.
Right. I mean, he has that in this film too. He's playing, obviously with the Native American situation. And, and like in that scene where he's yelling about his son and then Leo says, they only see the color of your skin. Yeah. And in the theater, I heard someone say, actually exclaim out loud when he said that, like, yeah, that's right. Something like that. It was like, people can react to that, but I think that he tends to be simplistic in that. Maybe in a commercial, essentially a commercial for BMW is probably a perfect outlet for that exploration the way that he does it. But I wish he would explore these things, which are great to explore with a greater depth and complexity and
I think there's complexity there. It's kind of a bit of a muddle. And like as much as I'm kind of defending this film, it does get muddled and it doesn't work in places.
But and then we can move on after this. I just want, for the record, you to state,
because this has to be a battle between Matt and me.
It does. I just want you to state here that you do not have a problem with the conveniences of this film.
I don't, because I think they're set up.
Which is the exact argument that I've had before. I just want to. We can go back. We can go back to the tape, but I just want that. That's all. We can now move on or talk about anything else. I just wanted that very clear.
All right, moving on.
We should come up. And are there other major points that we haven't brought up yet that we'd like to discuss as a group, or do we like to move just to sort of final thoughts? Because we're about at a minute. We've been talking for a minute, about an hour and some change, which I'm happy to go a little long if we have stuff to speak about. You have a ton of notes, Jess. I don't even know.
I want to hear from you.
If you want to jump in with something brand new.
I feel like you were pointing to the two Greek gods that I wrote down in my notebook earlier.
What is that?
The reason I wrote Kronos and Kairos was because whenever I was talking about this being a disruptance in people's days, and how like I felt like the novel thing that it was trying to do was it was trying to get us to slow down and wake us up for a moment to experience something that is very, very simple in a deep way. And one of my favorite speakers did a talk about these two types of interpretations of time, and how back in the day, around the time that this would have happened, when you would ask people what time it was, you wouldn't say 10 p.m., you would say winter. And so I felt like it played into where, like, in a very, very like fast paced, like what I was saying before, like the movies, there's a lot to try to experience in a short amount of time, and we treat time like it's this thing that's constantly refilling, rather than like paying attention to like these disruptances that sort of like wake us up. And so that I felt like it applied here, because I was like, oh, this is something that this is doing, and this is why it's special compared to everything else that we're seeing.
I totally agree. Yeah. And anything that's trying to bring film to this experience again, and I think I'm a fan of, like, same thing. Hateful Eight, I think, was an experience, and these films that are pushing the cinematic experience that can. I mean, it's the idea is to make you to have you pause and to think and consider your own ideas and your life. And although there are weaknesses, and I do think the way that it's set up as an experience and the way that it can sink into you viscerally like that, I think it does accomplish that, which to me is a huge accomplishment.
Absolutely, it does. It makes you feel, I mean, to the best of any film's ability of truly making you feel like you're in a place just by watching a place. This thing excels 100%. In fact, I turned to my girlfriend afterward, and I was like, well, fuck, like, I mean, any complaint I've ever had is now null and void, because could you imagine living? I mean, we just imagined living there for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And you're like,
right.
Fuck, that sucks. Like, could you imagine being born into that shit? And that was everyone before now. Like, that's insane. And to have that feeling of sort of like, I don't know, like how people lived their life back then, and even sort of just like having something feel so real on that level is a nice kick in the metaphysical face, to just sort of wake yourself up and be like, slow the fuck down. Yep. Your life is amazing. Just go live it. I don't know. I had a very go live it sort of moment after that, just because, I mean, my driving force, at least at this point, who knows what demonic pacts I'll make in my future, but is not revenge. Like, revenge is not my driving force.
No.
So it was just, I don't know. I think it did a wonderful job sort of doing that, and doing things that actually very few films do. I can get lost in a film, but not the place the film wants to take me. This movie made me go to a place. It held my hand and led me very comfortably, and then shockingly in some ways, into a place to live for 2.5 hours. Again, I'm going to go back to Jurassic World. Jurassic World never did that. Jurassic World turned my brain off, where this movie turned my brain on.
Yes.
So, but like, this dragged me into
your
it.
Body and everything, right?
Right. Yeah. And Jurassic World is just one of those things where I'm like, switch, and then in 2 hours I'm like, whoop, that was fun. Like, but I'm not thinking about the esoteric problems or things that are going on, and the people like, wow, those people suffered so much when that giant fucking sea monster ate that. Like, no, I just really think this movie did a wonderful job at taking you a place and a time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
I'm never going to Canada ever again.
No.
I think for all the failings of the film, that we've identified and talked about here, I think it's still such a powerful experience.
For sure.
And it made, like I was watching it going, I'm such a wuss. Like, I would not, like I would barely survive like the hike, let alone the being mauled by the bear, after that. I the thing that like my final thought is just one topic that
Are we doing final thoughts? Is this
I want to give you a funny tidbit based on that. Iñárritu and Chivo had been talking about this movie for a while, and they and Chivo said, I think it's time to make this film. We're getting older. I don't know if we'll be able to make it later.
Right.
It's such a hard.
It's such a hard film to make. Yeah, totally.
And we feel that very much.
You feel the difficult. But then again,
and then the director of Mad Max
is 72 years old. Up. Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say
but
that.
No, it's very true. Not everyone can be that dude.
And the one thing I was thinking about was the fact that this is a very guy film, and for some reason the story.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
the headline that came out was from Matt Drudge, who wrote the Drudge Report, and he wrote this headline about how Leonardo DiCaprio in the latest Fox movie gets raped by a bear. And like, because he watched the movie and that's what he saw, and I was like, and it led to this like strange thing that happened in the press where Fox Pictures had to like do a press release where they said Leonardo DiCaprio does not get raped by a bear in this movie, which is the strangest press release you'll ever have to put out, I'm sure.
Isn't that the bro way of saying that he got attacked by a bear? Is that
you got raped by a bear?
I guess.
Well, I don't know. I've never
seen broy.
That's very true. And a lot of broy, and
I don't think Matt Drudge is a bro.
And particularly like in shitty gamer culture, a lot of like, oh, that man, you got fucking raped, dude.
No, this dude wrote on paper he is raped by a bear.
Like narratively.
Sorry, continue, Shahir.
Yeah.
Well, no, I just thought the interesting thing about that, given that this is a very male-driven film, it's a very much a guy film, is that he completely ignored the fact that a real rape happens later on in the movie, and just glossed over that as though that was just matter of fact, And I think there is something to the fact that this film, while beautiful and stunning and does an amazing job of giving you an experience, it has that problem, which is that it's white man with native affection and man with, being driven by the memory of a woman. It's just a little
that's one of the absolute worst things.
And he's
in the
also
film. That's the sentimentality I was talking about. I mean, it's just terrible.
And he's super magical too, especially
as soon as her voice starts coming out every time. I was just like, God, no, please not again.
And also when he's traveling with the captain to hunt Fitzgerald, the moment that I just went, shut the fuck up, like audibly, when he's like, smoke, and the general goes, how far?
I knew it. I knew that was the moment. I knew it.
He holds his hands up and he does a little sprinkle thing. He goes, a mile, whatever, and you're like. Fuck.
I knew that was the moment.
One,
one
horrible thing that it's so weird. I don't know why. I'm thinking of like 2 or 3 films that have done this, but like I think that I'm really like. I don't think too many films do this, but it really annoys me when a film does this. Is like the glance to camera at the end of the final glance to camera.
He went full on Snake Plissken at the end of this movie. Snake Plissken at the end of the critically acclaimed film Escape from LA.
Yeah, I was going to mention the 400 blows, but whatever.
Does the exact same fucking thing. Oh, it was hilarious.
It's just this like. It's a moment of meta-narrative storytelling that is not in a film that is not about that in any way, shape, or form.
What do you think, audience?
Yeah, it was like it was you all along. Like I just
it doesn't make sense.
The only fourth wall breaking I want in my films is in fucking Deadpool coming out in February. That's all I want.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it if it works for the film, and there's just no place for that.
It's a strange moment. I do there was an interesting thing as well. Again, how many people watch Birdman?
Yeah, I watched Birdman.
The kind of there was some narrative continuity when he sees like a comet through the sky, which is something that we saw in Birdman, and it seemed to be part of his dream. I thought that was kind of an interesting connection, given that the films came out one year after the other. But whether it works or not.
The thing with him looking at the camera there, it's like the whole movie has been this effort to make you feel like you're there, that it's real. It's all about not bringing it forth. So at the very end, when he does that, it's like, okay, now you've been here this whole time. You've felt this, like you're living this experience. And now I look at you, which is supposed to shift that, which, in theory, you want that to work. Like, oh, that would make you think more profoundly about, the experience that you just had, because now oh, I wasn't living that, I was watching or something. But I just don't get it. Like, it just didn't. Yeah.
All I got in that moment was when he turned, my brain went from that wonderful magical place that I turned it to ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. And I was like, oh, we're at the end of the movie now.
Wow. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember him looking into it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. That was a good time to look away.
I must have.
Jess, were you checking your sports scores?
It's addictive.
Yeah. There's probably bro hair in the way.
All right, so we've been going for a bit. Was that your final thoughts?
That was kind of my final thoughts,
yeah. Jimmy.
Yeah, final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
I gave all my thoughts already. The final thought, the summary of it all, I guess, is it is very, very special. It's an experience. It's truly, cinematic, however you want to define that, but it's this experience that takes you somewhere that most films don't. I think it's quite unique, and I think it's unmissable for those reasons, it's particularly in the theater. You know, I really urge you to go see it in the theater and not wait to see it at home. And it has weaknesses as a film. Like in history, I don't think it's going to go down as a great film, but it's unmissable as an experience in the theaters. Even if you're not a filmmaker, I think that they've transcended it's worth seeing because you're a filmmaker and you need to learn from it. It transcends that, and it's an experience for someone who's not a filmmaker, and therefore you should go see it.
All right, Jessica.
I feel a lot of the same, and I feel like I got what I paid for. I wanted the experience. I knew it was going to be special. I probably won't see it again. Mm-hmm. I saw it one time in the theater. It's probably all I need. I feel like I also sound like I feel like I was defending it a lot, and I like Shahir said, it's like I did like it, and I will admit its flaws. But yeah, I would recommend it to someone else.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say that it is for all the reasons we mentioned before, a fantastic revenge movie. In fact, I would say it's a revenge movie, a fairly typical revenge movie done to the like the highest echelon level that a revenge film can be done.
Technically.
And it does it, yes, technically. And it does it with such just crazy passion for filmmaking in general, that it's definitely worth a see and see it in the theater if you can. Again, you know, I'm not going to nitpick it any more than I did. There are problems, and if you're the type of person like me that gets more bothered by problems, the more almost near perfect you get with something, that might bug you a lot. But it's definitely worthy of its sort of Oscar contention, and it's worthy of your time and your box office dollars. So if you're going to see that, or what the fuck else is out right now? Like
the only other movie I've seen this year is Daddy's Home, and it was a laugh.
Really?
So
it was funny?
Yeah.
Wow.
That review is not not the way I thought that was going to go.
No, I thought it was going to go completely opposite.
It's not great, but I laughed a lot.
I feel like Hateful Eight's the obvious other one. They're doing something kind of similar. And
yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like this is a much stronger experience to me than the Hateful Eight was.
This is a stronger experience, and it's a more visceral experience, but I did enjoy the Hateful, just on a personal level, just from story and the way that the styles that I particularly like. I enjoyed Hateful Eight more, but that doesn't mean that I think it's a better film in my. If you want to water everything down, Revenant is a quote better film on paper than Hateful Eight is. Hateful Eight is more enjoyable to me to watch, and I will go back to Hateful Eight even for the sole purpose. I've said it before in the review. I'm not sure if I'll like Hateful Eight a second time of watching it, because I like when I watch a mystery. The mystery is like a really sort of like the primal thing of what I want to do. I'm super curious to see if I enjoy it again. This one, I'm just not even curious to watch again. I just had the experience. I enjoyed it, and I'd like to move on.
I think they're both great experiences that should be seen.
Yeah. All right.
So make time for both, and don't schedule anything afterwards.
Exactly. Have some time to think about it.
Yeah.
Jessica, where can people find you when you're not quoting Greek gods?
You can find me on Twitter at Mother Tucker and on Instagram at JessTucker3.
Excellent. Jimmy.
You can find me at jwjferguson.com and on Instagram at jwjfilms.
Excellent.
Everything you can find about me, Shahir Daud, is at www.shahirdaud.com, SHAHIRDAUD.com.
We also have an email that I never remember.
Oh, you don't. Good people have been writing us and talking to us about movies. We really enjoy your feedback. If you have anything to say about The Revenant, please write us and tell us what you think. Were we wrong? Were we right? Were we completely indifferent to what you think anyway? Our email is onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, and we have a Twitter account at onlymoviepod. We also have a Facebook account, which we uptate once in a while.
Sure. Yeah, well,
but check it out and subscribe and like us. And yeah.
Also, if you watch if you watch the screen while listening to us on iTunes, please leave a review. Obviously, 5 stars is preferable, but we'll take the ones.
Yeah.
Just any sort of write and review and tell us what you think. And if you got a great idea for something we should talk about, or a style, or some sort of, little bit and piece that you think we're missing, we would by all means.
Our next movie has been recommended to us by a listener. Admittedly, it's a listener we know, but so we will take recommendations from listeners as well.
Of course. And you can find me at Matthew Kroll. That's MATTHEWKROL.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ, and on Twitter at Emperor MSK. And guys, Jessica, Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, so much insight.
For the only podcast about The Revenant.
What a privilege. Thank you.
I know. Nobody's talking about this movie.
So you can tell your friends that this is the only one, and you got to be a part of it, and we're very happy that you were. I guess until next time, sleep indoors, I guess would be my
I was
wish.
thinking of titles for like the sequel. Revenant 2, The Revenge of the Revered Revenant was my best one that I came up with.
The Revenant 2. Everyone's still alive for some reason.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But it's The Revenant TOO.
Yeah. 2 Revenant, 2 Yuri. I don't know.
The Revenant, Revenants with a Z?
Or the Revenants. Instead of, do the aliens thing. It's the Revenants. There's multiple Revenants.
Revenants, Resurrection.
That's what it needs is more Revenants.
Yeah, I think we really got to amp it up next time. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening.
I got nothing.